So, good evening, everyone. I'm Nachiketa Mittal, and welcome to Virtual Law School. Today, we are hosting on June 26th a webinar on starting a law firm, which is going to talk about a lot of strategic challenges, and it is meant mainly for the young lawyers and law firms who are wanting and looking forward to establish themselves as the new entrants in the law firm sector, especially during the COVID times. So I am Nachiketa Mittal, founder and director of Law School. I welcome all of you today for this special webinar where we have uh, five panelists who have been working in different law firms all these years. And they are going to talk to you, they're going to speak about their experiences and also suggest certain very credible that you can probably use in different kinds of situations that you would be facing or probably ensuing consequences of the COVID times. So I welcome all the panelists here, whom I'll introduce shortly, and I also welcome all the attendees here and the participants. But before I move forward, my dear friends, it's my pleasure to apprise everyone about a very small journey of the virtual law school that we have completed recently in the last 2 months. In fact, to tell you all, as I'm speaking to you today on 26th of June, so yesterday on 25th of June, we have completed our 2 months of working in establishment. And we started our first pro bono class on 27th of April. And as we complete 2 months also of the classes, so from tomorrow, we're going to start the low bono law classes, which is exactly falling on the second month of the pro bono classes that we began. And in last 6 weeks, we have taught around 600 law students from across the country with 6 days a week and 5 hours a day, as rigorous as we could think and make it, at par with any school of the country. And we were blessed to have been joined by some of the leading members from the bar and the bench, like Justice A.K. Sikri, Justice Kurian Joseph, who began teaching some of the initial classes at the virtual law school. At the same time, we were also privileged to have been joined by Mr. Siddharth Luthra, a senior counsel in the Supreme Court who taught classes on bail, Justice Anand Pathak, who is a sitting judge of the High Court, and he taught a full 20-hour on Code of Criminal Procedure, which according to me, and I believe also as our students benefited, is quite unprecedented. Sitting judge of a High Court to take as number of classes as 20 hours and completing almost short module course. At the same time, we had some of the leading professors like Professor Yogesh Pratap Singh, who is a sitting registrar of the National University of Odisha. Also, we had Professor Shanta Kumar, who is the vice chancellor of Gujarat National University, coming. Then we could also host some of the senior counsels like Mr. Sibyl, Mr. Salman Khurshid, Dr. Abhishek Singhvi, and also Mr. Prashant Bhushan. And also we had one very interesting and a distinct kind of session on glossophobia, the fear of public speaking. To overcome that kind of syndrome, we had a special session with Shri Yatindra Singh, who is a former Chief Justice of High Court of Chhattisgarh and also former judge of the High Court and now a senior counsel practicing in the Supreme Court. So this is how we started a journey, and in between hosted a number of programs, webinars, sessions for the law students, lawyers, and also for the legal academics. And today, as we're completing the 2 months, we thought of making another intervention with the help of our friends working in the law firm sector to look at that how the lawyers are getting affected with the COVID times and how the situation is going to be quite tricky for them during and post COVID scenario. So now, as you all can see, we have the panelists before us. I'll shortly then now going to introduce all of them. So first of all, we have with us Mr. Ashish Porwal, who has been a dear friend over 15 years. Ashish is an alumni of ILS Law College, Pune, has worked with some of the leading law firms in the country like Amarchand Mangal Das, when it was not Cam and Sham as you see them to Cam and Sam. And then he has also worked with advocates and solicitors, Luthra and Luthra, Juris Corp Mumbai. So, and now at present, Ashish is leading his own firm, Reem Legal in Noida, in NCR, and has been working as a founding managing partner of the firm for last 6 years. And he has established this firm after having several years of experience working with the top law firms of the country. So I welcome you, Ashish, on the session today. Thank you for agreeing, to participate. Then, my dear friends, I do have a pleasure to introduce my another very dear friend, Tanushi Singhal, who is alumni of Law School Bangalore, has worked as an independent IP lawyer for several years, has also been a panel consultant with Growth Thinkers LLP, with CWE Hub, and interestingly to tell you, Tanushri also has been a legal, having taught in Amity Law School in Lucknow. So it's a very unique combination today that I have, with the legal practitioners and also Tanushi bringing in a diverse form of a legal academics perspective as well as an IP lawyer perspective. And currently, Tanushri is a founder of Adventus Legal, which is a law firm, does work in the IP sector. So then moving forward, I also welcome Mr. Anupam Prasad. Anupam has been some of the leading top law firms of the country, like he was a partner of Indus Law, also partner at RDA Legal, has worked with Khaitan and Company. And Anupam is now leading his AP Law Chambers as a firm in Mumbai. So welcome, Anupam, on board today. Thank you for agreeing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So
and just I want to
please go ahead, Anupam.
Just wanted to apologize. I'm facing some tech issues on the video front, but I believe I'm loud and clear. So I think we can just proceed nevertheless.
Surely, no problem, no problem. Yeah, right. So, and Anupam has also been an alumni of NUJS Kolkata, my dear friends, to apprise you further. Then I have two other panelists here on the screen, as you all can see, Anish and MP Shri Vignesh, who have been my proudest students as the first batch of National Law University Odisha. Anish has also worked with the top firms like Shardul Amarchand and Khaitan and Company, and a partner with the AKS Partners in Delhi, and also works largely in the corporate side. Then we have also with us MP Shri Vignesh. MP Shri Vignesh has been a litigation lawyer, mainly working in the Supreme Court and Punjab and Haryana High Court. So Shri Vignesh started his practice with the late senior advocate Shri P.P. Rao, who is a well-known constitutional and service law expert in the country. He has now been able to establish his independent practice successfully in the Supreme Court as well as Punjab and Haryana High Court. So friends, we have today a very diverse panel, which is a combination of lawyers who do a lot of heavy-duty corporate work on the general side. Then we do have, combination of lawyers who work on the M&A side, IP side, litigation side, right? So it's a unique combination which we have brought to you today to discuss various kinds of niceties and nuances that the legal sector is undergoing a lot of pulls and pressures during the COVID times. So now, without much ado, I will start with the session. And first of all, I would ask certain questions and invite remarks and observations from Ashish. So Ashish, if I can ask you that you started your own law firm a few years ago, you have consolidated, as a legal practitioner, having streamlined your work for a few years now after, working with a lot of leading law firms. So in these current scenario of like COVID times, how would you put forth your story as an independent legal practitioner, at the same time having established your firm and moving forward? So what is your story, if we can hear it from you?
Yeah, thank you, Nachiketa. I think and thank you very much for the kind and generous introduction that you gave, and it's a pleasure to be on this panel. It's a very, very interesting discussion because it's not very common for us to share as lawyers, to share our journey to people who aspire to be on the same boat. And when I say same boat, it's actually boat in terms of running your own practice, because every lawyer, somewhere in his mind, he has that dream of going independent. Now, some people do it early in the life. Some people do it immediately after, completing their law degree. And some people have a different approach where they spend a lot of times working with different organizations, gaining some meaningful experience, and then branching out or delving into that ocean of independent practice. So my take on this whole, journey as a whole is that what I realized that initially I had a lot of misconception or notions about what does an independent practice entail, or what do you mean by setting up a law firm. My initial thought was that it's very, very inorganic decision that you decide one day that I want to start my own law firm, I want to go independent, and that's when your law firm is born. However, now when I look back to last few years, how I've grown as a lawyer, spent my time at my own law firm, I realized that it's a very, very organic journey. The idea of starting a law firm, or rather your law firm takes birth not at the time when you actually set up an office, but at the moment when the thought comes to your mind that I want to go independent. Now that thought may start at a particular moment, it may mature over a period of time, and after some time, where you are able to analyze all the pros and cons, see what works best for you, and then you decide to take a plunge. It may be a long time, it may be a short time. So in my case, especially when I decided to go completely independent, it took me almost 3 to 4 months to prepare myself mentally as to, am I really cut out for this, or is it just a impulse decision on my part to go independent. From my journey, when I realized that yes, I am mentally ready, the next obvious step was to get my infrastructure in place. And that is somehow, I believe now that it's a very, very important and a critical aspect, that before you take a plunge, you need to have all the infrastructure and basic issues sorted. And which is why I strongly believe that it's never a bad time to start a law practice. I know we call these times as COVID times, and a lot of people are, not sure whether we should, whether is it a right time to start your practice? Should you take the plunge now? Should you wait for a few more months or years for markets to improve? But trust me, there is nothing like a bad time for starting your own law firm. It's always good to go independent, subject to you being comfortable about two aspects, or rather two situations. Anyone can go independent anytime, and this will depend upon in which boat do you want to place yourself. Firstly, any person who has some kind of backup, and when I say backup, it's primarily financial backup, to be able to support himself for next 4 to 8 months. If you have that kind of savings or backup in place, you should, and if you intend to start a law firm, you should definitely do that. There's no reason for you to wait for COVID-19 times or pandemic to get over. Secondly, if there's no specific financial obligation upon you to support someone, take care of your family, or other needs, in that case as well, you can immediately take the plunge and start your own practice. The only situation where I would guard people, or caution against lawyers or budding lawyers who want to go independent, is that it may not be a very, very good idea to go independent or start a law firm, especially when you are fresh out of college. Because when you practice law as an independent practitioner, it's not just your legal skills that come into play. It's also a lot about learning how to interact with client, how to position yourself in negotiations, how to face the court. And that is something which can only come by experience. So if you spend some quality time, it could be years, it could be months, it could be anything, whenever you believe that you are ready to face the world as an independent counsel, you should definitely look at doing that. Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. You're audible. You're
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Then in terms of it's a very, very common question that we all come across. What does it take to go independent? Do you need to have some specific things prepared, sorted before you take the plunge? My take on that is that you really don't need anything specific to start a practice. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is that what is your, in fact, you should collate your thoughts regarding what is your core area of practice, what exactly do you want to do, and one very important but not focus aspect is what you do not want to do. Because when you start your law firm, it's very tricky because you start getting mandates from all corners, and there's a lot of temptation to say no to certain kind of work. But trust me, you have to be very, very clear, very, very mindful of what you are able to take, because my strong recommendation is that one should only take up those matters, those mandates, which you are confident of being able to deliver on your own. It's a very, very strong temptation that you take up the mandate, then outsource the mandate to someone else. Trust me, it is good. It looks good from a money making perspective, but a lot of times it may backfire badly. So we have to be very, very sure what we, and this is how you will also be able to position yourself in your prospective clientele. Your clients should know what is that particular kind of practice area for which they need to come to you. And while in the course of your client handling, you must be very, very clear, very, very certain about informing and educating your clients as to what are your competencies and capabilities, and what is something that you should not do or you're not capable of doing. So in a way, the general take is just to summarize that yes, you can start your practice anytime as long as you are financially comfortable, you have that kind of patience and preparedness to face the world, and you are clear about what you want to do.
Thank you so much, Ashish. Thank you so much. That's a very pragmatic sort of a view that you've taken, and actually a very wise advice in out of your years of experience that you could take leaf out of your experience book, that how the young lawyer should look at it, and probably not the COVID or non-COVID times as well, but probably to look at a larger picture, and maybe if I can put it in that way, to capitalize on these trends than only looking at the circumstances all the time, right? So thank you. That's a very
Right.
valuable piece of advice that I take away as myself from there, and our participants would also have realized that part of fact. So Anup, if I can now come to you, now you have started your own firm few months ago, and I've been in touch with you. We have been speaking about it, and you having been working with some of the leading firms as the partner. So I wanted you to reflect upon certain issues, like how do you see? I mean, I am going to bring back the discussion around the COVID times because that remains to be the central theme of the program today, and we cannot escape a reality of certain kinds that have been posed to us by the challenges circumstances. Now, in that, Anupam, what do you see would be an effect on mid-size and smaller law firms? One. And second, probably after that, you could reflect upon the fact that when you began your journey as a law firm, so during that time, probably the COVID situation was emerging, and how and what kind of measures you could now put into force to re-strategize. Probably you might have had certain plans of 6 months down the line, or 1 year down the line, but during the entire time when you were planning your firm, COVID situation was coming up, shaping up. It has really hit all of us. So where do you find yourself standing now? And you may have an occasion to revisit your entire kind of strategies. So how would you take that kind of experience out of your book and also advise our young friends today?
Sure, sure. Thank you for the questions. And in fact, my journey as an entrepreneur and as sort of the founder of AP Law Chambers began around in the month of February, March, around that time. And of course, we had no inkling of what we were getting into in terms of, as we call it, the COVID times. But before I deep dive into the questions that you asked, I think it's sort of not on the topic, but I think we need to sort of give you a hats off to the initiative that you have taken in form of virtual law school, which I think these people are sort of should take advantage of. And it is certainly, I look at it as a bridge between the knowledge deficit, if I may use the term, that we generally see, and access to quality legal education, which I think you are doing a awesome job to bridge that gap, if not close it up. completely.
Thank you, Anupam. Thank you for that.
And I would encourage everyone to take advantage of the opportunities that you have gotten. I mean, I think it's hats off, and we of course continue, and would like to remain your partners as you plan ahead.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah. And now coming back to the question that we have, of course, the assumption is, and that's true, that nobody has escaped the issues surrounding COVID-19. When it all began, perhaps the situation was people were a little happy to take a step back and have the opportunity to stay back at home, for instance. But again, over a period of time, it's been almost 100 days now since the lockdown has happened. And I believe just yesterday I got to know the state of West Bengal, it's been extended until July 31st. So we will need to see how this issue pans out. But at the same time, we just can't sit back and do nothing about it. While we may call it the new normal, and how we need to sort of ensure that we undertake whatever businesses, provide services, whatever we need to, we have to figure out under the circumstances. Now, when we talk about mid-size and younger law firms, of course, it is assumed that mid-size and younger law firms would be sort of facing the pain, if I may use the word, would be slightly larger under the circumstances. But I am generally an eternal optimist, and we continue. I'm also in the same boat as I would call it a younger law firm. So we have, in terms of a few examples that I could share that we have done towards taking care of the current situation and how we are functioning. We are relatively busy, I must say, which we thank the Almighty and count our blessings for that. So we have taken numerous steps, and for us, the service sector that we are in, client comes first. We understand the difficulties that they may be facing, especially clients which are perhaps in the startup space, MSME, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, I have seen, and that itself has created opportunities. It is that time that we need to engage with our clients in a more wholesome manner, and also try to help them with the issues that they're facing. Of course, as lawyers, we only qualify to opine on legal issues. So that would be the scope of our sort of services, if I may put it. I always think in terms of the current situation that is there, COVID-19 itself has, to my mind, emanated as a practice area. Now, when I say that, of course, there are a lot of changes that are happening from a regulatory standpoint. Government is providing a lot of benefits to various sectors, various packages are being announced, a lot of timelines with respect to statutory compliances have been extended, and this is a continuous process that we need to see. So that is one example where, in fact, I've been talking to a lot of our clients who may be not in terms of the statutory compliances, there may be a lot of shortcomings, but this is an opportunity where I'll give you an example where the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has come out with something called the Company Fresh Start Scheme, which gives you an opportunity to sort of make the filings which they have been delayed, or ideally there have been a penalty or some fines that were required to have been paid, but which is not the case now. You need to make the filing, pay the cost that was generally prescribed, and avoid the penalties. And this scheme is available until September. So this is one where you could sort of guide the clients that, you know what, of course, there's not much business happening, but it's a great opportunity to do some kind of, internal cleaning as well, and getting the records right when the opportunity is there. But having said that, we, as I believe lawyers, it's an entrepreneurial work area. I would not call it a job, really, a profession. So whether you're in a firm or otherwise, I have been, this is my 14th year of working. So my story began with Nishit Desai Associates, which is a mid-sized firm. Thereafter, I moved to Khaitan and Company, which is one of the largest firms in the country. Thereafter, I moved to RDA Legal, which is like a startup law firm. Then I moved back again to a mid-sized firm called Indus Law, and thereafter, I'm in my current role. So I've had a sense of how things work between a mid-sized, small, and a largest firm. And yes, there are pluses and minuses everywhere. But under the current scenario, I remember facing the similar difficulties. Perhaps the difficulties currently is more aggravated. I'm talking about referring to the year 2008, when a lot of transactions were not happening. The markets were pretty much down in the dumps. But there were silver lining as well there. Litigation was blossoming. Employment law was doing pretty well. So I think especially since I believe the audience here is a younger crowd and perhaps students or freshers. It's important, at least first few years when you start off. Of course, it's good to specialize eventually, to have a broad based structure where you get an experience of the varied practice areas wherever you work or whatever you do. So that will also help you determine which practice area you finally want to specialize in, which is very important eventually. Now, coming back again to the current scenario, while perhaps the transactions that we saw were happening pre-COVID era, it's not happening as much, but there's a lot of practice areas that we are seeing quite a bit of work happening. I had mentioned, say, employment law practices there. There are distress M&A happening, strategic acquisitions happening. There are a lot of companies, perhaps which are cash rich. They're looking to acquire companies who are perhaps seeking some kind of a bailout in some form. Similarly, the technology, has been sort of increasing or developing by leaps and bounds that we are seeing in terms from the transaction and advisory standpoint, edtech, fintech. Then again, in the medical devices space, there's a lot of inquiries that is happening. Yes, of course, things have slowed down, but it is certainly not a hopeless situation. There is things happening. Things may have slowed down, but yes, we are in discussions with a lot of stakeholders that the market holds. Other thing that we have also seen, a lot of companies are cost cutting, including on the legal costs. So this is one opportunity where sort of entrepreneur or individual practitioner, I'm sure, could see a lot of opportunities there where one could sort of place themselves. Yeah, I think that kind of. I'm not sure if all this answers the questions, Dr. Mittal, that you asked. But in terms of, you have to talk about spare a few moments in terms of my journey, how I decided to plunge in, because I've had so many varied experiences. I'll take a few steps back. Like, since the longest of time, I have been away from home, boarding since third standard. So the element of sort of entrepreneurship, leadership, you kind of imbibe as you move along. And I think that's what has happened. Even in college, I was in a lot of leadership positions in terms of heading committees and so on and so forth. So that always remains. And I always believe, as lawyers, we need to be entrepreneur also, whether you're in a system, in a firm, or otherwise. Because as you rise in seniority in a law firm, there's the expectation of business development, leading a team, so on and so forth, which requires you to be an entrepreneur, to have those qualities. So that sort of kind of led me to do what I'm doing now. And yes, I've got a good bunch of people whom I've known for a while to sort of work alongside, and we work all as partners. So yeah, it's a great space to be in. It gives you a lot of flexibilities. It's high risk, high reward, and you've been around for 14 years in law firms, so you know what you've done and what law firms generally offers. So yeah, I think it's a pretty exciting role to be in, and I would certainly encourage everyone sooner or later to do give it a shot.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much, Anupam. I really appreciate that very candid kind of a journey that you have put forth for all of us to appreciate that there could be a number of challenges, but at the same time, what I take away importantly is, and undoubtedly, that being a lawyer is also about being entrepreneurial, right? Which is part and parcel of your leadership personality, and which I, in fact, tell all my law students all the time, that being a lawyer is, one, to empower yourself, and then to empower everybody else. And that's the reason perhaps we see that, lawyers have been, in a number of ways, the nation builders. So you talk about any country, any democracy in that regard. So from, you'll find everybody who has been at the helm of the affairs in the state in any democracy has been a lawyer, right? So we do have even all our examples surrounded from the, Gandhis to Nehru's to, Sardar, and everybody was a lawyer. And even today, as we see, in any kind of government, UPA or NDA, all the top portfolios are held by a lawyer, notwithstanding the fact that they probably didn't come from the technology background. So we do have our IT minister as a lawyer, right? And it doesn't matter. So that's been a very good sort of a game-changing thing, which I tell all my law students and also young lawyers to look at it, being entrepreneurial is always part and parcel of your personality as a lawyer. So be it Obama, he was a lawyer too, right? So that's very interesting sort of advice that you have put forth for them to, one, in the end, to give it a shot. So you shouldn't shy away from taking a plunge into this kind of precarious situation which has emerged at the moment. But yes, keep your energies intact. Thank you so much, Anupam.
Yeah, and
So
at the same
I
time,
have, yeah.
sorry, at the same time, I'll just take 30 seconds more. What
Please.
Ashish sort of mentioned, of course, it has to be thought through, planned,
Right.
and so those things go without saying. So yeah.
No, thank you. So now I have now pleasure of moving to Tanushi Sangal, who has been a dear friend and has been a practicing IP lawyer. So now, my dear friends, all the attendees who are listening to us, the lawyers and the law students, as you have heard now, Anupam and Aish, who have been lawyers working with different law firms, I now have a pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker, who has been largely focused in a very specific domain of intellectual property rights. I think giving consultancy to a lot of law firms and clients on that particular area. So, Tanushree, if we hear from you as part of your very specialized work in the particular branch of law, so how do you see this entire situation affect the IP regime and its working? One, and secondly, that how would you think that in a specific domain? I'm asking this question for a reason, because now with the changing times, when we are now grappling with use of technology, and in fact our life is more focused with the use of technology as opposed to the bricks and mortar kind of structures that we all were dealing with until February end or early March. So the technology is definitely going to bring in a lot of IP issues. So you being an IP lawyer, how do you see the rise of the IP lawyers probably, and how should they channelize it moving forward? So probably, it could also include some portion of your story till date. Over to you. You need to unmute yourself.
Initiative.
Yeah.
Thanks,
I'm
Nachi.
done. No problem.
Yeah, and I think I'll first congratulate you on this wonderful initiative which you have in something that is pro bono at this particular point of time where students need that kind of an academic support as well as the practical guidance that they need in the times of COVID when things are bleak as far as education is concerned. So, and I'm really happy to be a part of this panel where we are discussing the legal practice as such, and we are discussing how, and why we go independent. So, sharing a brief snapshot of my story. For starting my firm at Apprentice Legal, working independently in virtual roles, in smaller roles, in partnerships with some people. Some of them worked, some didn't. And it was around 2 years ago when I started my own firm. And one reason of starting the firm in a smaller city, Nachiketa, was to be able to tap the kind of potential these tier 2 cities have in their developing infrastructure and their practice areas where we could actually tap the coming up. A lot of startups, there was a lot of innovation happening in tier 2 cities. So, after giving a couple of years to with students and educating in family, when I started off on my own, I realized that there are people who would need that kind of knowledge and awareness in the first place, then to be able to come up to a level where they could actually generate, a good legal practice. So, one way that I actually did was to be able to become a part of certain federation of entrepreneurs, and there are that are provisions that so I believe start being in a tier 2 city is it has become been an advantage in itself that way. if I speak of a specific field, there are not too many IP players in a tier 2 city. That helps me actually, get a kind of an exposure that, would not have been possible definitely in a tier 1 city. Yet again, when I started off, I did to IP. I started off professional in the beginning of my career, but then a large part of my future like next jobs were dealing with commercial contracts, corporate advisory. And so when I started off, I also took up the areas which helping up startups, licensing, brand licensing, taking up real estate practice. So we do have a flourishing real estate practice under Adventist. So those areas, and picking up, say, for example, certain commercial disputes, litigation into certain commercial disputes, specific ones. So that has helped us actually have a wider base than just doing IP. So IP is, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So IP is definitely at the core area of our practice, but IP is not the only thing that we do. And I think, to answer your question, that was just my story. So to answer your question, how, first of all, how this COVID has impacted the IP practice. Now, of course, the transactions time. The IP office is been functional majorly because of the e-filings that we have. We have everything has been moved to electronic. It's all digitized. So filings were on, though because hearings are not happening. Yet again, IPAB has also allowed the e-filings. It has activated e-filings, and the virtual hearings are happening there. So a good part of the IP practice would still keep going on. The prosecution part would still keep going on. Definitely the contentious IP issues have suffered. But then, as I said, to advise people who are dealing in IP, I would definitely say that technology, be very, hands-on with technology. Because that is when, once COVID has happened, we have actually made all our functions virtual. They are functioning virtually, whether it is our interns or our associates. We have made it all virtual. We have a tech-enabled environment that we work with, and having that kind of we can say like having that kind of an enabling environment, we've been able to survive. Yet again, to be able to advise the newcomers in the IP field, and especially in this time of COVID, I would definitely advise them to not restrict themselves only to IP, have a kind of an exposure towards different areas, related areas, maybe, say, licensing, get into licensing, or, depending upon your interest area, get along and develop some additional competency in this, which would help you to survive not only just this pandemic, but also help you develop in case you are planning on your own independent practice. And even if you are looking the freshers who are out of law schools and who are looking at IP as a career, I would definitely advise them to actually have a broader mindset and not just look at IP, but look at also other commercial legal areas where they find interest. Reason being because the recovery will take time, and sticking to restricting yourself to just one area would not prove to be helpful in generating a lot of avenues for them. So that is definitely one advice that I would give. Second, in this particular time, even as Anupam has pointed out, that there has always been different areas which were coming up. Law as an area of practice always has that kind of a benefit that, if the economy is going up, then we have transactions. When the economy is unfortunately in a recession period, there would definitely still be some work for the lawyers to engage in. Client counseling is one, advising the clients on certain crucial areas that happened because of this pandemic, where many of their business relationships were being redefined, where their contracts were being rewritten. certain areas in their contracts which they needed help with, in being able to devise a win-win situation for the parties to the contract. Yet again, not being into certain areas, I did try and widen my scope to advising people who are facing issues relating to a lot of labor regulations that have come up. Uh, the difficulties arising in retaining their labor and advising their and taking appropriate actions towards retaining their employees or employee issues. There have been queries relating to rent and the contracts relating to their real estate and work. So all these things have been coming in, and we have been trying to keep on cashing on this particular phase. So having an open-minded approach is something that is required for most mid-size and the startup law firms. I would call myself a startup law firm, where if we have that kind of an open mindset to take up issues and to advise people who are where we can actually extend our hand and do that hand holding. For even for startups, there have been a lot of startups which faced sudden closures, and yet again advising people to be able to protect their IP in this particular crucial time, because it is not that if the business is not happening, they don't need to protect their IP. They certainly need to do that, whether it's generating their new products, that if they are launching their patents, if it is their trademarks, they have to be protected. So of course, and the new IP that is being generated in their newer business activities. So this is something that needs to be advised to clients, and so a regular client contact is required to be able to help them with what they need to do as far as their compliance is concerned, as far as their legal interests are concerned, whether it's their contracts, whether it is their IP, their employment related or their real estate related issues. So communication definitely is very, very important. And one area that we have decided to tap on is knowledge management, because this particular phase has actually helped us to look back, which probably in my last few months I was not able to give as much attention to developing a good research base and developing some kind of a knowledge base to be able to help not just our juniors and not just but not just the clients, but also to be able to apprise ourselves with the new developments and taking up certain initiatives. So we have taken up an initiative of developing policy papers and publishing policy papers on certain new developments and regulations. So that is something which I would definitely suggest the students to work on their fundamentals, to work on probably increasing their knowledge, whether it's about joining certain courses or of course whatever they can have an add-on courses or getting hands-on say internship experience. So that will definitely help them, even for the people who had started up. For them, if they take up these courses, it will help them in getting an edge over the others once this situation ends, and once they are required to actually grow. So this provides them an edge. So I think capitalizing on this knowledge, and it's most of these things are the webinars and these articles and everything is freely available. So I think that is something I would definitely suggest the freshers in this field, and also the mid and the startup law firms, that they could probably capitalize on.
Right. Thank you so much. That's a very comprehensive view that you have taken about how the IP lawyers should try to look at the changing times, and also how they should probably, as I can say, reskill and upskill themselves.
Absolutely.
Right, because that's really important in these times. And I've been telling all my students, agreeing 100% with you, that this is the time where you should heavily invest in yourself. In fact, a lot of adversities bring in also opportunities. And I am seeing, especially since the lockdown time, as a legal academic, that there couldn't have been a better situation for anybody who wanted to plug the gaps of the education or plug the gaps of knowledge by investing in your own self. Because in one way, these are not too competitive times, at least for the law students, or for the law researchers. So they had in fact a lot of time to reflect on their previous learnings and also upgrade it. So likewise, it's going to be probably for the rest of the semester, the upcoming semester, as I believe. So all your advisors actually pay heed into that entire perspective of how effective you can emerge from this situation. And yes, on the other side of you speaking as IP lawyer, where I definitely heard your points that how the IP work certainly cannot be shut down, except some kind of challenges which are there with regard to filing, with regard to arguing, so on and so forth. In touch with, as you know, I have talked to you also previously with some of the other IP practitioners. So, except some of the procedural issues, but apart from that, the work is going on,
Work
right?
is
So the
going on.
show must
Certainly.
go on. So that kind of stuff is there. So my dear friends and participants and the attendees here today as the participants, you must take a lot of these key inputs back home that to reflect upon and also to work upon them, because then only these kinds of webinars that we all attend make any kind of a value addition to us, not merely hearing them out and then moving on to the next webinar. So thank you so much, Tanushi, for those very experiential sort of words from you. So now I move to Mr. Anish Jaipuriar, who has worked with some of the other leading law firms in the country, and Anish has been majorly a transactional lawyer. So Anish, what do you see as the transactional lawyer, that how these kind of work is going to undergo change during this current scenario, and probably also looking at your own journey, that you have recently come out of a big sort of a law firm of Shardul Merchant Shroff. So, and you've started your own firm around the time when the challenging situations were shaping up. So, where do you see yourself? Lot of other friends, young lawyers like you, also lot of recent law graduates, a class of 2020 now, that how they should now probably I would say seize onto the right opportunities and take them forward in stabilizing rather than being in the state of panic. So over to you.
Right. Many thanks for the question. And of course, at the outset, let me congratulate you, sir, for the initiative of VLS. I think it's a wonderful initiative, and a lot of students will benefit out of this initiative. And hats off to you for putting out the time and effort and energy on this. And extend a big thank you for also including me in this discussion. As a budding lawyer, it's enriching to sort of hear and participate with such an esteemed, well-experienced professional. So thank you for including me. Coming to your first question, I think transaction lawyering is one of the practice areas of law, which I believe remains more or less unchanged. So when I say unchanged, I do not refer to the quantum of such investments or such transactions happening in the market. Because those are certainly effective for for reasons more than one. What I mean is the way in which transaction lawyers and law firms are providing their legal services with respect to a transaction. The manner of provisioning these services remains more or less the same. Let me clarify. During the initial years of my career, I was made to travel a lot. Either you're visiting another law firm's office for negotiations, or you're undertaking a diligence on an asset of the target which is being acquired. So this essentially required a lot of physical movement. But due to, of course, COVID-19 measures, these physical movements have been reduced. Has been reduced. While eventually also what I witnessed was that the travel requirement also was reduced in course, primarily due to the reason that most of the clients wanted to use economically cheaper methods to sort of gain the same amount of services at a lesser cost. So hence came the sort of advent of virtual data rooms, and which reduced the requirement of traveling to various places. So we adjusted ourselves as a budding lawyers. We adjusted ourselves, and learned how to use virtual data rooms or video conferencing facilities. So this is more relevant now, because again, when you talk about COVID-19 measures, international travel is still restricted. and it's likely to remain restricted. So, we're looking at a lot of use of tech, and we're looking at, employing data rooms and virtual data rooms and video conference facility where you can do live changes and negotiate with the counterparties live over a video call. This was oftenly done when there was no COVID-19, but I think we are seeing more and more use of this tech because of COVID-19 measures. Certainly, use of tech has increased. I think I've been reading a lot of newspapers which are talking about how private equity funds are talking about using drones to provide live footage of the existing assets and buildings and practice sizes, so that they can factor it into their diligence and accordingly value the company. So I think we can expect to use a lot of tech when you talk about transactional lawyering. Screen sharing capabilities are there with each video conferencing facility, and I think that provides real-time access to documents and negotiations, which is as good as sitting in a room together. I think another innovative aspect of tech is blockchain. I think a lot of the, while it's still yet to be sort of implemented in the legal field, I think blockchain has a lot of capability to sort of ensure reliability of documents which are being shared as part of diligence, as part of negotiation, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think another aspect of blockchain is smart contracting. I think that is going to immensely change the way transaction lawyering is done today, including secure transaction lawyering. Compared to litigation lawyers, I think the requirement of compulsory physical movement, which used to exist pre-COVID-19 era, I think was still restricted in a transaction lawyer, because you can still sit in your office, get on a call with your counterparty or your colleagues to sort out the issues that you're facing in the documents. So then most of them, the real life example would be the investment of Facebook in Reliance. So this happened right back in the middle of COVID-19 measures. So we didn't see a lot of. So we can actually see how compatible transaction lawyering can be with COVID-19. So I don't feel a lot of change would happen. Certainly, the manner in which we conduct ourselves and provide services is going to undergo a lot of change. On a lighter note, I'd definitely like to point out that one of the issues which remain unaddressed is the humane application of use of tech. What I mean by this is you need to simply realize, a simple realization is to come that 24/7 availability of tech does not necessarily imply 24/7 availability of employees and resources. So I think that's one humane aspect we need to be taken care of. Coming to the second question, when you talk about major challenges, I think there are a lot of challenges. I had to go through to sort of decide to go independent. Of course, you have a lucrative job. At the end of every month, you get a huge sum of money deposited into your bank account. So, of course, you have that comfort coming in from having a job with a tier 1 law firm in the country. But again, it is mostly a subjective decision to sort of be driven to make your own name, to establish your own clientele, to do your own do the kind of work which you like. And at your own pace, at your own speed, I think that's the freedom I was looking for, and hence the decision to quit and do my own thing. I think the challenges that I'm currently and of course, you talked about how, and I think the panel has already talked about a lot of issues that the lawyers are facing during COVID-19. I think Anupam started his independent practice right back in the middle of COVID-19, so hats off to him. Luckily, when I quit, it was 2 months before, so I did not plan for COVID-19. But unfortunately, when COVID-19 did struck all of us, I think we had to re-strategize our own entire decision to implement how to use your cost, how to use your resources, how to bring in clients. I think all these decisions meant a drastic change. I think the social distancing norms has certainly reduced the prospects of meeting clients physically. So even though right now we can definitely travel and meet a client, yet I think because of this, I think being on a safer side, the clients and the lawyers are also avoiding such physical contact as much as possible to the extent absolutely unnecessary. So I think I think I have a real life example also. One of the, I think maybe it's silly because I was actually about to advise a client for a hospital acquisition transaction during in middle of the COVID-19. However, because of stringent measures of COVID-19, we could not travel and meet the client. And as a result, he was not, he couldn't get the comfort of, uh, having met a very, a new lawyer who he has not worked with. I think there was a big, major challenge that even the client was sort of facing. So, he went ahead with somebody who's familiar, although that other lawyer was not in the exact field of practice. So, you can see how familiarity of clients and how clients can get comfortable and not comfortable. So I think use of tech while meeting virtually needs sort of will take a lot of time for to become a standard operating practice. I think the other aspect would be capital allocation. I think we had to sort of strategize how to invest our capital. Initially, we had decided that this much capital will be invested towards furniture, this much capital will be invested towards having a proper office in place, then kind of digital legal database you need to subscribe to, the conferences you need to attend to, the publication you need to sort of write and things like that. I think all of those has changed. All the publications are now looking at a COVID-19 impact and implication. I think while COVID-19 certainly saved the cost of getting a physical office, but it also reduced the visibility aspect of being losing out on a face-to-face meeting with clients. I think that became a major challenge for you to sort of land a client. And given that you're so young in the profession, I think without that physical touch, I certainly felt that I was losing out on a lot of scope. The other challenge that I've been facing is to sort of the relation to unpaid invoices. I think without fault of the client themselves are facing a lot of issues. But again, things have made it difficult for us because even our work which was done during pre-COVID times have remained unpaid, and that has also increased the challenges of me as a young budding lawyer. So yeah, I think that's about it. Over to you.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anish. So yeah, what you have brought in is a new dimension now that probably that during the times when the IT is supporting all of us together. So what can be the challenges that it does bring to the lawyers? What kind of work, how they can be expected to be working perhaps around the clock, or that shouldn't be so. So with a lot of ease in terms of being accessible does not necessarily mean that it would mean 24/7 at the same time. And then you could also touch upon some of the interesting aspects that, as I would want to put it, that the craft of transaction lawyering is undergoing a transition of a kind, from that visiting the offices and doing the deliberations face to face. So how that is now been shifted to online, and probably there would be some hiccups in the virtual segment, but they can certainly be overcome, because as I see that it's now inevitable. So we all have to upgrade ourselves and forget the old habits and sort of develop the new ones, because that can only probably save us from worrying too much, and on the hindsight, in fact, to contribute effectively. Right. So thank you, Anish, on that note. So coming to Sri Vignesh, Sri, I welcome you on board. It's probably a little longer day for you because of the virtual law school, because you took the long session also for the virtual law school, another course, before logging on to this webinar. So thank you for doing that, Sri. So now another sort of question for Sri you is that, unlike the most of our friends as the panelists today, you have been a litigating lawyer. You started your journey as a litigating lawyer at the Supreme Court. So one, I would want to know from you that how was your journey of coming through for last 6 years? Secondly, that when the law firms themselves grapple with a lot of the clients and work and things like that, how far is it far more challenging, probably, or not, or maybe less, that to work as an independent lawyer? One. Secondly, to work as an independent lawyer in these challenging times in the Supreme Court. Now, you are somebody who now represents, in a way, here, having your office and work profile in Supreme Court, also in Punjab and Haryana High Court, as well as in Chennai. So you could then bring in that dimension that you are not, that way exclusively working in the Supreme Court. So how far the independent lawyer should be able to sail through smoothly in these tough times? Over to you.
First of all, thank you for having me here and making me part of this wonderful initiative of Virtual Law School. Taking classes, to be very honest. So, coming into my profession, am I visible and clear, sir? Am I visible and audible?
It's better now. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, you are visible.
I'll be very honest and very open over here. See, most of the law students have an idea that after 5 years I'm going to join litigation. So why do I need to work at law schools? So most of those students, they never moved or they never entered into any competition. They merely go study, do their exams and get back to litigation. So, but I felt the pinch when I started my practice under Mr. P.P. Rao, my senior. So I felt, I have to work more and more, double the work what I did during law schools in this litigation profession. Because what I was taught by my senior was, this is a very, very responsible profession, and every person who's approaching you has given their lives on your hand, and it's you who have to take them, sail through the tough times. So that was the thing which I was taught, and I was, each and every litigating lawyer, what I feel is must bear that in mind before taking up clients or interacting with them or arguing the case before the court. So it's a mere hard, it's a hard work we need to put in at the first instance when we start litigating, because I'm sure 90% of the law students might not have faced that much of difficulty in law school when they enter litigation. So my independent practice was not so planned as not so well planned as what other so my senior expired, so I was forced to become independent, to be very honest. So my journey, I initially did not have any resources, I never had an office. Am I clear? Am I audible?
There's some disruption, Shiv Vignesh. There's some disruption.
There's some problem with, I believe. Hello.
Yeah. So yeah, you can go ahead. We may not be able to see you, but we can hear you.
Yeah. So I never had a resource of, I never had anyone to back me up, in my profession. So I had to share an office space with another advocate initially when I became independent, because the day he expired, next day I had to go independent. I had no other option. So for 6 months, I had to take up an office space with another advocate. So subsequently, I had to find my clients also. So I had to travel a lot to almost 6-7 high courts to meet lawyers, to meet the clients, and I had to travel to various district courts also in my own state to show to make them believe that yes, I can do myself. I can do things better for them. So this was my journey, to be very honest. So to be during this COVID times, yes, definitely litigation lawyers are facing a lot of problem. I personally know many lawyers who had left Delhi due to this challenging environment which we are in right now, and they have gone back to their hometowns, and they have started they have established their practices there. But what I would say is, like what my previous panelists said, we need to take advantage of this situation as well. Most of the litigating lawyers, we were never so, because
We probably have lost connection with Sri there. No problem. So what we can do is, meanwhile, we can move ahead. Can you all hear me? Anish,
Yes.
can you hear me? Okay. So what we can do is we can move ahead in the meantime. Pick up some of the questions. Ashish, Anupam, Tanushree, if you all agree. So we do have some questions here in the chat box and also in the Q&A section. So if you all do permit, I can take those. So the first question is about asking that as a young lawyer, how do you bring clients and more importantly, retain them? It's not targeted. It's not mentioned. It's who should be answering. So I leave it open. Probably, the senior members of the panel, Tanushree, Anupam, and Ashish, can take it up. So Tanushree, since I can see you there on the screen, so what do you want to take it up? As a young lawyer, how do you bring clients and more importantly, retain them?
Hello, am I
Yes, yes,
audible?
yes, you are
So
audible.
the first thing that needs attention is, where are you coming from? Once you are starting your own practice, do you have any client base altogether, or you're starting just afresh? So one way is, like I said, to chase the potential clientele that you will have once you are starting your own practice, say from zero. Then chase the potential clientele. One way that I have done is to network with certain state bodies and certain networking groups. And of course, like I said, that in IT field there are a lot of benefits that the Startup India scheme offers to in terms of IP filing. So the startups, the women entrepreneurs, they do have benefits. So to be able to, first of all, to be able to reach out to these people, I needed to join certain organizations. That has a two-way process. It's not just to be able to get clientele, but it also helps me in educating these people of the kind of provisions and the relaxations that the patent office has for these particular clients. So one way is doing that. Client retention is a little tricky. I mean, first of all, I think it depends on the kind of work that you do for them, the way you help them, and if you are able to provide them with consistent advice, about their growth, to be a part of their growth process, I think you will be able to retain clients. If I talk of young lawyers, there are many startups, and I feel really proud once, when they are growing, and I feel they're really proud to be a part of their journey, not just from the time they started, but also today when they are growing and they need me repeatedly for their own new products, or when they're launching their new services. So it's always a pleasure to work with such people. So one way to retain them is, first of all, provide good and reliable services. Continue to provide the same standard of services. Client connect, reach out to your clients, and specifically in these times, I think communication is very important. Through your say even you have a knowledge portal maybe, and reach out to the clients with the new things that you are doing to and or about any update, any news update or any knowledge update that you can provide them. That
Right.
is
Thank you.
one way to do that.
Correct. Thank you. I have a related question which I can probably route to Ashish if you are able to hear me.
Sure.
That how do you manage initial expenses about establishing new law firm, collecting work, retaining client, and paying to junior clerks? I'm routing this specifically for you because amongst the panelists, you are somebody who has consolidated the energies for past 6 years as a law firm.
Yes, I think what happens is that initially when you start out, managing your expenses is a huge problem, because you need to have two different set of expectations to be met. One is you can't make your office or your practice appear to be, so to say, cheap, because unfortunately a lot of times client will come to you, they may get attracted if they see certain fancy office and all that stuff. So you need to be mindful that you should have a decent setup. At the same time, the areas where you may be able to cut costs and expenses is that initially for first few months you should be able, or you should be prepared to do most of this stuff on your own, right? And it could be as petty stuff as getting your own photocopy done, getting your own printouts. So instead of having two office boy in the office, you could just do with one office boy, right? Instead of having a dedicated accounts personnel, you could have that function outsourced, and either you could share your resources with like-minded people. That is in fact a lot of lawyers initially they do it. So and in right now that has become a very very common situation where you, instead of having your independent office or separate office, you sort of work from a business center, or likes of Innovate or 91 Springboard. So that will give you a lot of opportunity to cut down on your expenses. You can have a good fancy office without having to shell out a lot of money. At the same time, a lot of overheads as well are taken care of. So that is the first part of the answer. Now, client retention is something which Tanushri has already mentioned, but and just to add on it, see, when you're working as an independent counsel, and so you are the face of your firm to the client, in that case it is very important to bring that personal touch. It's not really just delivery of services and the clients being happy with what you're delivering. You need to add some kind of personal touch, and it's a very very thin line of situation, because if you get too personal, client may see you as too pokey or too nosy. So you don't need to delve into his personal life, but make sure that he feels comfortable with you to be able to share his sort of business problems. You may not be able to give him answers, but you may become his springboard or bounce board. So let's say he's coming up with a new strategy, market campaign, and he's just looking for second ideas or second thoughts. He may come to you, he may share his story with you. You may not be able to give him any legal guidance on that because it's not a legal subject matter, but you may still give him some perspective as a prospective consumer. And a lot of time it becomes, game changer. So, and I have experienced that. So getting that personal touch is quite important.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashish, for very practical advice there. Right.
Also,
So
Dr. Mittal, hi. Sorry, I just wanted to
go ahead.
on especially on the point of how do you sort of conserve costs that when you really start off. So I think tech is something one should really focus on as well. There are a lot of softwares, technology, apps which are some form of the version of those apps are free also. I use some very diligently to maintain my timesheets, and it has even possibilities of in and out timing. I don't really pay for it. It's a very basic version, which currently serves my purpose. So I think there's a lot of things available on the tech side, which one should certainly explore. And yes, I mean, right now that we are moving, I mean, when I started off in sort of Feb and March, before the COVID situation took place, I had decided I will not take an office, although I have sort of a place in a co-working space. And I must confess that at that time I was a little embarrassed also that I'm not taking an office which I was never heard of. But now, I mean, lo and behold, we are perhaps moving towards that. And in fact, I was just earlier in the day reading a paper from, I think, some comments from NASSCOM, that how the laws need to be changed and attuned to providing for work from home facilities also. So I think that's going to be the new normal. Yeah.
Right, that's true. In fact, I was coming to you with another question, Anupam, that very interesting. In fact, somebody has asked, which is good for everyone, but I wanted to route it to you. That the question is that what mistakes usually the freshers do while setting up a new law firm? What mistakes did you do, which we can learn a lesson from?
Absolutely. So when I assume when you talk about a fresher setting up a law firm, I would imagine you have had some bit of work experience and not really out of law college and setting up a law firm. So assuming that being the assumption, by nature, I'm slightly conservative. Let's put it that way. A lot of people say, just set up a shop and business will come to you. It doesn't happen that way. Obviously, when I decided that this is what I'm going to do, the homework started a few months before. And obviously, when you you put in your papers in the then organization, you have a notice period to serve. You always think of the next step moving forward. You get in touch with people whom you have known, and and explore possibilities. Of course, when I'll be very candid. When I moved out from my last sort of workplace, I was fairly confident that these 4 clients would reach out to me, because I was doing a lot of work for them. But that did not happen. 4 did not happen, but 2 did. And they are good sort of clients to have, certainly. So to that extent, I got lucky. And also where you sort of place yourself when you're in a larger law firm, you're typically involved in matters which are of much larger stakes. The ticket sizes are much larger, the complexities are huge, and you are used to catering to that kind of sort of transactions or clientele. But when you sort of try to decide to set your own shop, it's not going to work that way, because clients also need to sort of reach out to larger firms, and rightly so, because they have all the facilities, various practice areas, and the bandwidth, most importantly, to serve those requirements that the clients have. So you need to step back. I would say take quite a few steps back and literally start from scratch, because when you're trying to build up your practice, obviously, as even Ashish pointed out, in terms of one of the cost cutting measures, right now I would say 90% of the work myself, and that helps me. Obviously, in terms of on the bandwidth standpoint, it's not very easy or at times possible to take up transactions which are slightly larger of nature. And we also advise the clients perhaps we should reach out to a set of people who have the expertise on that area. So therefore, there is an element of trust also that develops. It's one may look at it as, oh, it's an opportunity or a business loss for me, but at the end of the day, we are in the service sector, and client sort of their well-being and their issues being addressed remains priority, even if it is at the cost of you losing that opportunity. And yeah, it will certainly come back in some form or the other, not by the client, by certain references and so on and so forth. I have seen that happen. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much, Anupam. That really is very worthy sort of an advice for everyone to take away. Now, Tanushi, I have a specific question coming up for you. Somebody wanted to dedicate the question to you, and he wanted you to ask that. Could you elaborate on startups and corporates that you have supported in the second tier city like Lucknow one? Second question, I think, should be rooted to you because you hit it upon the issue that there are some online portals emerging that list lawyers saying that just in dial sort of way. So does that make sense to invest in some kind of those portals to get the clients or to make the reach for the clients?
Okay. If that, the first part of the question asks me about certain specific, if the clientele, then I would rather, categorize them in the different verticals. Like, for example, there is F&B. There have been women-centric startups into say crafts and stuff. There have been tech-enabled startups. There have been insurance startups. So these definitely they can prosper anywhere, not just in a tier 2 city. They could So and I'm glad to be a part of definitely be a part of their journey. There have been startups even in the field of say HR consulting. So I've helped them through their journey. So there definitely there will always be business provided you are able to look for that business. So we need to all have that eye of being able to identify the potential source of business for us depending upon our bandwidth. So that is what I spoke about when I was discussing certain tips. And the second part of the question is these online portals. There are many online portals these days. So while I would not comment on which one is reliable or which one is not, I would definitely say that for the clientele, these online portals, when they work, a large part of the client details is retained by them. So while you perform that work, you are not personally connected to the client. So it's just like the work comes to you, they'll find your profile suitable, they'll send that work to you, you perform that, you get a part of the fee. So, but then that personal touch is missing. So you really do not know whether that client is actually coming back to you because of the nature of services that you provide. And yet again, it also depends upon your own negotiation. That there is always a scope for negotiation that you are able to do with them, and if they are able to, if you are able to actually do that chunk of the business in that particular stream with them. So it depends on those things.
Right. Thank you so much, Tanushi. Then one last question, if you all permit, and a couple of them are actually interrelated. One is that if one is currently a student, a law student, and has an intention to appear for advocates on record exam after 5 years, so what is the optimal time considering the starting the law firm? and given the requirement that after 4 years you have to practice under a senior advocate for 1 year. That's one. So if somebody wants to take that up, probably Shri Vignesh. And then the last one more question is that if you're a first generation lawyer and you wish to establish your own firm, so after passing out, certainly what is needed. That should you be or a senior counsel, or how should you plan your move forward? So, Shivignesh, you can probably take up the question relating to, I don't know if he is there. Probably, I think Shivignesh lost the connection. Okay. So maybe Anupam and Ashish, you want to take that up?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I may not be the right person to speak on the question of the one regarding advocate on record.
Right.
Perhaps I could take the latter one. Whether where should one begin with from a larger firm to a counsel practice and so on and so forth. I think the key lies what your interests are to begin with. At the same time, one shouldn't really shut their their minds that this is what we want to do. I have had shifts of various practice areas. In fact, in my 14 years of work ex, like when I moved from Nishit Desai to Khaitan and Company, I was part of the infrastructure practice. In fact, NDA did not even have an infrastructure practice then. So I was a little surprised that I was being hired. I was, I think, 4 years into the profession, and I was hired into that field, that sort of practice group. But my thought was, you know what, I have been doing something until then. Let me see, I perhaps may enjoy this more than what I was doing all this while. So that and I was pretty positive about it. Of course, I've been burnt my midnight oil on a lot of these huge project finance documents and so on and so forth. But at least that gives me an indication as to what I want to do. So coming back to the question, I think the person needs to be a little clear as to what they want to do. I understand the clarity will not be there as a fresh graduate unless you have sort of experienced it, a lot of sort of practice areas. And a lot of larger law firms, in fact, they have this rotation policy wherein for every 6 months you're part of one practice area, and which continues for about 2 years. So that really helps you. I think that's a lot of people look at it as a negative, but I think that's a very good sort of move to have from a growth and a training perspective. So yes, I mean, join a larger firm. There are pluses and minuses to that. You may get lost in a crowd, so as to say, but it all boils down to who your seniors are and who the partners you're working with. And this rotation policy, I think it's a good thing to have.
Thank you, Anupam. And I think the question on AOR, I can take that up. That my dear participant, the answer lies in the very question that when there's a requirement, specific requirement with AOR, so you definitely need to fulfill that first before thinking about setting up your practice, because your law firm actually, because if you're looking at the AOR to be registered AOR in the Supreme Court, then that's completely a different kind of work that you're looking at. In comparison to having probably a corporate law firm or something like that. So for that, it's a mandatory requirement and you need to fill that up. So thank you, my dear friends. And before we close the session, I just wanted to know, especially from the senior colleagues, Tanushi, Ashish and Anupam, that if you have any last advice for the class of 2020, which, as I also know, so many of my own students who have been under a lot of pressure, that how will they be able to have a smooth ride moving forward? How will the law firms look upon them that probably they were promoted to be a graduate class, right? Or did they have to undergo as much rigor as any ordinary, graduating class undergoes? So Ashish, would you want to just wind up with your remarks?
Yeah, so I think good thing first, if we look at from a law firm's perspective or a law firm's eye, a lot of grill actually depends upon what you do once you enter the profession. So if I'm looking from a law firm's eye, so I would not really see how you actually cleared your exam. So were you promoted? Did you get a particular kind of grade? Or if you would have actually appeared for exams, you would have got a better grade. So as long as you are able to crack the interview, once you are there with the firm, it doesn't matter how you are there. And I don't think in a lot of cases it will really matter if because the recruitment process does not start just in the last month of your, while you're about to appear for exams. The recruitment process for most of the law schools, or even otherwise, if you independently apply to different law firms for a job, the process starts 6 months back. So by the time you are about to appear for exams, a lot of people may have already got into, some position. So in that case, it won't matter. So once you are into the firm or into the profession, no one will care how you finally cleared your exam. And but the bad part, or not so positive part, may be that it might affect your confidence in a few situations, especially with a bad senior. If someone questions if you have a bad day and you face a bad senior, then it might shake up your confidence, and you have to be very, very sure that you put your things or let your things stay together, and don't be worried about how you entered into the practice. As long as you have a law degree, as long as you are registered with the State Bar Council, you are as good or as bad a lawyer as all of us are. So it doesn't really matter.
Right. Thank you. Anupam and Tanushree, you have your final takes for the class 2020?
Yeah, I think my thoughts. Sorry, go ahead, Tanushree. Please go ahead.
No, that's fine, Anupam. Please continue.
Sure. Thank you. See, I think, yes, it's a big, bad, bold world outside that you're going to step into. Those days of being taken care of in a protected college kind of setup is over. So I think I would say be brave. There will be ups and downs, certainly. We have all gone through it. You will find very good seniors, terrible seniors. They may be very knowledgeable from a law perspective, but from a people skills standpoint, it could be a very difficult, person to deal with. And frankly, I mean, yes, to an extent, I may blame them, but generally, we're in a high pressure job. There used to always be a joke, at least when, we sort of started off, or we can, there's always an end time, when to get into the office. There was never an out time. While the HR manual may say 10 to 6 or 10 to 7, but it would be perhaps 10 to forever. I have instances, I have worked 40 hours at a stretch. My parents would say, "Itna kaam kya kar rahe ho?" That kind of a thing. So, no, but yes, that's the way it is. And rightly, a lot of my seniors have said this is a lifestyle choice you've made. So the point that, there's work-life balance and all of that, I would just say welcome to the grind. It's a great profession. There's a lot of opportunities that throw up, once you're there and once you start enjoying what you're doing. And yes, I mean, even in terms of a lot of people, I remember long back I'd gone for a pre-placement talk. I will not take the name of the law school or law college. The only question they had at the end of the day, how much do you guys pay? So having said that, yes, it's all part. It's you work well, you do well, it all follows. And even if you join a largish firm which pays a lot of money and you feel that, I have arrived, it's just a matter of a year or two, then you say, that's not my priority. I need my sleep and my peace of mind, and those things will come in. These are very personal and one-to-one thing, but yes, it's up to you what you make of it. So.
Thank you, Anupam. Yeah, Tanushree, go ahead.
Absolutely right. I think I agree with Anupam completely. And just to, I'll just add two little bits to what Anupam has said. Definitely, it is a formidable world out there. And the add-on current glamorous vision of entering the the law practice, and you have the Suit series in your mind. Forget it. It's not going to happen, at least for a year. So you will take time to become the Harvey Specter for your own self. So yes, it's not all that dreamy and it's not all that flashy. Initially, you really have to slog it, and you really get those dark circles which they never show it on in the series. So, but then yes, as a bit of advice, I think this is a big time for you to be able to understand where you want to end up, and as I said, keep your options open, because currently nobody has it all figured out. Even even the law firms, they really do not know what things what they are going to do in the next 6 months. So have that thing in your mind that fine, whatever you are getting right now, if it's it may not be something that you had dreamt of, but stay on, hold on for a while, and things will definitely shape up better than what they are currently. And at the same time, as I said, upskilling is very important. Keep working on your own self, keep working, and say, and get that edge against others. So that will definitely help you when this things start opening up, and they are really bright enough for you to take that bigger plunge. So I think that is what I would advise them to do. Work hard. Definitely, there is no whichever way you look at it, there is no substitute for hard work. It all
Right.
only depends where you put your hard work in.
Yeah, just can I come in
Yeah,
for a
go
second?
ahead, go ahead, Anupam.
Yeah, I think I just missed on this one point.
Yeah.
It's at the end of the day, I mean, which I feel very important, give a lot of importance to. It's networking, which you can start when you are even a college student. You're be in
Right.
touch with your professors, your seniors. Of course, there are difficult times, placements. Perhaps I'm not sure how well it's going to happen. You know, it's essentially we are almost at the precipice of losing out a year. So we need to figure out how we look at it positively, as Tanushi said, to build on skill sets and make sure that to show to the prospective employer that yes, this is how different I am from the rest, and perhaps bag a job. But yes, there is enough pain points. But law is, I always say it's omnipresent. Just doesn't matter which sector you're in, law is there, right? We are living in a civilized democratic society, and law sort of ties up all in. So that's going to be there in some form or the other. So yeah, I think I think that's what you should sort of have a chin up and move ahead.
Right. Right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ashish, Tanushri, Sri Vignesh, who perhaps we have lost connection with him. So thank you all of you for coming together and speaking your heart out, your stories, your journey, and your piece of advice for a lot of young lawyers who are going to take a plunge in a very competitive world out there. And especially during the challenging times, we definitely cannot discount on that. It's not the smooth journey that's going to be waiting for everyone. But yes, we all need to upgrade ourselves, and that's the only way out, right? So in fact, I see it as as a very opportunity for everyone that we have to work doubly hard than we normally used to do. So it's only to churn out the best out of ourselves, and we would be perhaps ahead of many others because we need to understand the law of inertia. Had it been a normal situation, we would have pushed ourselves that far, worked that hard. So that's probably thanks to the adverse circumstances. And I think it's also time that, as I see that most of the people have been very creative, because we have been forced to do that, think out of the box, think something new and do something new. So I really have a lot of hopes from a lot of my students who have been, reaching out to me over the past 2 months that how they should progress ahead. And also a lot of young law graduates who have already started their journey. So all the best to everyone. And please feel free to connect with us and also with our speakers who can be mentors for all of you. And thank you everyone on the panel to join me today. Right?
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Goodbye and have a good evening.
You too. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye bye.